In this video, I'm giving you my personal top 10 underrated boss fights in the Soulsborne games. These bosses are bosses that I enjoy, but when I tell my friends that I enjoy them, they give me confused and slightly disgusted looks as if I just told them that I enjoy pineapple on pizza. I'm just kidding. I don't have friends. And this goes without saying, but this is a purely opinion-based subject. I am going to provide an explanation for my opinions, of course, because let's face it, this is the Soulsborne community, but at the end of the day, it's just personal preference. And with that said, let's get started with number 10, Folding Screen Monkeys. Look, I know what you're thinking. There's no way in hell this dude actually chose the fucking Folding Screen Monkeys as an underrated boss. But, hear me out. I'll admit that on subsequent playthroughs, this fight is just a pain in the ass, but on the first playthrough, I actually really enjoyed it. It's a nice change of pace from the brutal, unrelenting difficulty of Sekiro. I always appreciate it when From Software games take risks and introduce non-conventional, weird, quote-unquote boss fights like this one, even if not all of them exactly hit the mark. The gist of this fight is that you need to chase and kill what seem to be 3 monkeys. The mechanics of the fight are based on the Japanese proverb of the 3 wise monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil, which fits very well, since Sekiro quite literally takes place in Japan. A fictional version of Japan obviously, but still. Each monkey embodies a line from the proverb. The purple monkey, see no evil, will see you coming from really far away, so you have to sneak behind it to kill it or somehow blind it. The green monkey, hear no evil, can hear your footsteps, so you have to find a way to deafen it or use a loud noise to mask your footsteps in order to kill it. The orange monkey, speak no evil, will cause a commotion and alert the other monkeys when it sees you. The point of this fight is to use the environment to your advantage in order to circumvent each monkey's special ability. For example, you can lure the green monkey near a waterfall, which will mask your footsteps and allow you to kill it. You can lure the purple monkey in an attic and then jump from behind it to get the kill. Of course, the twist of the fight is that there's actually 4 monkeys, not 3. The final, white monkey, is actually invisible and will follow you around, leaving footprints behind it that give away its position. Look, as I said, this fight only works well once. Using your environment to your advantage, the fact that there's a secret 4th monkey, both of these factors make for a memorable first experience. Problem is, after you've already completed this puzzle once, there's really no enjoyment to be found in doing it again, which is why this fight doesn't rank any higher in this list. But I do have to praise it for its concept, which is why it takes the number 10 spot in my list. Number 9, Asylum Demon. The Asylum Demon is the tutorial boss from Dark Souls 1, and I think it doesn't get enough recognition. I don't think anybody thinks that the Asylum Demon is a bad boss or anything, but when thinking of Dark Souls 1 bosses, most people's minds immediately go to the heavy hitters like Artorias, Manus, and Ornstein and Smough. Also, when people think of good tutorial bosses, usually Iudex Gandir is the boss that pops up in their heads. And for good reason, Iudex Gandir is a fantastic tutorial boss. But in my opinion, the Asylum Demon is also a great example of a tutorial boss serving its role exactly as it should. Mechanically, the Asylum Demon is very simple, especially compared to Iudex Gandir, but this makes sense in the context of Dark Souls 1, which is a slower game compared to Dark Souls 3. The Asylum Demon will either use its hammer for some relatively long-range melee attacks, or will slam the ground with its body for a stronger melee attack, albeit with a much shorter range. These attacks are simple yet deadly enough to teach the player how to block, dodge, and use positioning to avoid them. The first time you come across the Asylum Demon, you won't have a weapon. Now, you're free to just stand there and try to punch it to death, but obviously the game intends for you to run away from it and come back after you've gotten your equipment, which is another valuable lesson in the From Software games. You don't have to fight every single opponent the game throws at you. It's often better to run away and come back when you're stronger. And for these reasons, the Asylum Demon takes the number 9 spot on my list. Number 8, Champion Gandir. Despite being much easier, everybody praises Iudex Gandir, this boss's weaker, toned-down version, as a fantastic boss fight. And again, for good reason. Iudex Gandir is the tutorial boss fight of the game and is probably one of the toughest tutorial bosses, if not the toughest, in all the Soulsborne games. Champion Gandir is the much harder, optional version of this boss, which is actually the warrior in his full strength, fought in the hidden area, the Untended Graves. So why does he make the list? Well, it's simply because I think he gets overlooked a lot. Dark Souls 3 is the king of good bosses, don't at me. It has a lot of great memorable boss fights like the Soul of Cinder, Pontiff Sullivan, the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, the Nameless King, Slave Knight Gale, and so on. So in the midst of all these titans, it's easy to forget that this boss exists. Again, he is found in a pretty hidden area behind two different illusory walls. Champion Gandir is a very challenging but rewarding fight. He doesn't turn into the Pass of Man like his tutorial fight. This is him at his full strength. His melee combos are incredibly lethal and he provides little openings for counterattacks. He is, however, very susceptible to parrying. So much so that I recommend that everybody tries to parry this guy, even if you don't necessarily use parrying in the rest of the game. It's overall a really fun and challenging fight, and the fact that he has not been corrupted and fights you at full strength might also reveal a nice bit of lore behind this area. The Untended Graves are a dark/alternate version of Firelink Shrine and the Cemetery of Ash. Now, the fact that you get to fight Gandir at full strength might suggest that this is actually a version of these locations in the past. It's never explicitly stated that it's in the past. Shocking, I know, but the evidence does seem to suggest that. Anyway, really cool boss fight, nice lore implications, which is why he takes the number 8 spot on my list. Number 7. Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. The Stormruler fights in the From Software games aren't exactly the most popular fights, and you can understand why. The Storm King was a spectacle fight. The aesthetic was great, the fight felt phenomenal, using this magic sword to crush a colossal stingray was epic as hell. But mechanically, it was as simple as run and grab the sword, kill some smaller stingrays, wait for the boss to pass close to you, land some hits, and then repeat from step 2. Yorm the Giant was a fun, albeit fairly underwhelming fight, especially considering he was one of the Lords of Cinder, meant to be the grandest and most important fights in the game. And don't even get me started on the Everdark Sovereign Maris fight from Night Rain. It was just awful. But Rykard, I think, is an example of a Stormruler fight done right. It is by far the best one of its kind. This is because the fight actually challenges you. It plays more like a normal boss fight, just with the added element of using the magic sword to damage the boss, instead of using a normal weapon. You still have to dodge the boss's attacks, position yourself correctly, unlike the Yorm fight, which was mostly you running away until you managed to fully charge up the Stormruler. In the Rykard fight, there's a much more satisfying back and forth between you and the boss. You can stun the boss by using the weapon's Art of War, but this doesn't work consecutively. The exception here is during the second phase, specifically when Rykard is casting his ultimate attack, which brings down tons of homing flaming skulls. If you time it correctly, you can keep using the Serpent Hunter's Art of War consecutively and keep stunning the boss, as he will keep trying to cast his ultimate move, which leaves him vulnerable. Now, Rykard might not be one of the greatest bosses in Elden Ring, but I think he should receive more praise for being a boss fight that does the Stormruler gimmick right, which is why he takes the number 7 spot on this list. Number 6. Old Hero. The Old Hero is one of the many gimmick bosses of Demon's Souls. Now, Demon's Souls isn't exactly known for its great boss quality. In fact, only 2 bosses are really considered conventionally really good in this game: False King Alant and the Penetrator. But I think the Old Hero is a good example of a gimmick fight that's done right and is not too gimmicky. The Old Hero is blind, meaning that he uses sound to locate you. This means that wearing heavier armor and sprinting more will give away your position more and make this fight harder, while wearing lighter armor and not sprinting as much can make this fight significantly easier. This incentivizes you to fight in a strategic way, uses the boss's weakness against it. Again, it's another example of a gimmick fight that's not too restrictive and provides an interesting twist on a conventional boss fight. If you don't play along with this and try to beat the Old Hero normally using heavy armor and not being stealthy, you can still technically do it, it's just going to be a lot harder. On the other hand, if you want to make this fight much easier, you can wear lighter armor, be more stealthy, and of course, equip the Thief Ring, which makes this fight almost an insta-win, as the boss will have a really hard time pinpointing your location. It's rare that you can influence the level of challenge so much in a From Software fight, so I think this dude should be given more praise, which is why he takes the number 6 spot on my list. Number 5. Godric the Grafted. This is another example of a boss fight that's not really considered bad or anything, it just gets outshined by other, more epic boss fights. Godric is the final boss fight inside Stormveil Castle, and is probably the very first Shardbearer boss players will face in Elden Ring. Now, there is a massive wall of difficulty called Margit that guards Stormveil Castle, so he's the one usually getting all the attention in this area. The game is, very unsubtly, telling you to go level up and then come back stronger before you head into Stormveil Castle. Because of that, it's actually very unlikely that you'll face Godric underleveled. If you've beaten Margit, you probably won't have much trouble with Godric, which adds to the reason why I think Godric is a great boss fight. He's just at the perfect level of challenge. In a game where bosses can be complete pushovers if you go in with powerful builds and summons, or in the other side of the spectrum have been overtuned into oblivion to account for these builds and summons, Godric presents a nice, fair level of challenge. He's not a pushover, but he's not too difficult either. He has several melee combos, projectile attacks, his Earthquake attack is a nice reminder that there is a jump action in Elden Ring and you should be using it. His second phase can be a bit rough until you realize that it's actually significantly safer to be near Godric rather than far away. He's also an interesting character in terms of lore. Godric is not a badass or a strong person, far from it. He's a descendant of the Golden Lineage who, despite being a demigod, was so weak he had to resort to grafting to make himself stronger. He's actually an angry, cruel loser, which makes his inevitable defeat all that more satisfying. Anyway, really cool boss fight that is sadly overshadowed by the tons of other great boss fights in Elden Ring, so let's move on. Number 4. Flexile Sentry. The Flexile Sentry is the boss of the No Man's Wharf area of Dark Souls 2. The hell's a wharf anyway? A level of quasite area to which a ship may be moored to load and unload. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Anyway, the Flexile Sentry is actually a really interesting and in my opinion well-designed boss. The gist of this fight is that the boss basically has two bodies, one on each opposite side. Immediately this makes this fight unique in that you can't exploit the boss's back to get some easy hits, which was definitely something you could do in earlier From Software games such as Dark Souls 2, which forces you to deal with this boss from the front, or one of the fronts, dodging its attacks and finding opportunities to counter, which admittedly isn't too difficult, the boss's combos aren't exactly complicated. There's another important aspect to this fight though, and that is the arena itself. If you pay attention, you'll notice that the water level will slowly begin to rise as you're fighting this boss, which adds an element of pressure to this fight. Now, in reality, the water level isn't really that much of an issue. It fills up very slowly and it's much more likely that the boss itself will kill you before the water has any significant effect on you. The water level doesn't actually increase to the level that it can drown you, but it does hinder your movement a lot if it gets too high. If nothing else, this is just a cheeky bit of psychological pressure on the player. If you're playing blind, then you won't really know that the water level can't kill you and will likely be pressured into being more aggressive and less careful, which can end pretty badly. So really cool concept for a boss and a nice added element of time restriction. In my opinion, this guy should receive much more praise. And again, it's not like people think this boss is bad, it's just overshadowed by other bosses, especially from the DLCs of Dark Souls 2. But yeah, cool boss, which is why it takes the number 4 spot on my list. Number 3. Dragon Slayer Armor. There's no cool gimmick or interesting mechanics that influenced my choice for the Dragon Slayer Armor being on this list. This is just an awesome humanoid boss fight that I think gets overshadowed by other awesome humanoid boss fights in Dark Souls 3. The Dragon Slayer Armor is a mandatory boss fight in Dark Souls 3 that guards the entrance to the Grand Archives. It's actually a hollow piece of armor controlled by the Pilgrim Butterfly, that huge amalgamation of flesh and bone behind it. Some people think that it belonged to Dragon Slayer Orstein from Dark Souls 1, though his armor can actually be found in the Archdragon Peak, so that's probably not it. This dude is straight up a banger humanoid boss fight. He uses both his great axe and shield to damage you, and his shield is arguably deadlier than his axe. He can swap between one-handing his great axe for faster melee combos, or two-handing it for slower, heavier attacks. The Pilgrim Butterfly will also occasionally shoot out projectiles at you, and in phase 2 will periodically shoot a delayed laser beam, similar to the Amygdala's attack in Bloodborne. The way to beat this boss is through patience and perseverance. The Dragon Slayer armor can be extremely lethal and punishing if you're greedy, but it actually leaves a fair bit of openings after some attacks and combos. You just need to find out which. Anyway, again, I don't have any sort of smartass justification to give about placing it in this spot, or hell, even in the list entirely. I just think it's a great fight that doesn't get enough love. Also, the fight's theme is an absolute banger and easily my favorite theme in the entire game. Number 2. Radagon of the Golden Order. I'm breaking a personal rule by placing this boss here. See, throughout the entirety of my channel, I've always considered Radagon and the Elden Beast to be a single fight. And in truth, they are a single fight. You fight one right after the other, you don't replenish your HP or flasks or anything between the two phases, and if you die to the Elden Beast, you have to fight Radagon all over again. So they are, in fact, a single fight. But I'm splitting them up for the context of this video because in this video I want to focus specifically on Radagon. I've mentioned a couple times in my videos that Radagon would possibly be my favorite Elden Ring boss if he wasn't tied to the Elden Beast. Top 3 at least. And I think a lot of people don't really appreciate this dude that much, maybe in part because he's tied to the Elden Beast. Radagon is your standard, fast-paced humanoid boss fight. His combos seem simplistic, but in reality that's just a clever guise to catch you off guard. While it seems like he's just attacking with his hammer, the challenge comes from the variety of Radagon's combos. Sometimes he ends his combos early, other times he follows up with an extra attack at the end. Paying close attention to his movement and not being too eager to strike back are crucial if you want to win. He also has a variety of holy attacks, some of which he imbues his hammer with, like slamming you from above, or his 3 ground slam combo. He can also shoot a variety of spells at you, such as holy projectiles, creating a magic field that does damage over time, and many more. He can also teleport, and in his second phase, his teleportation will cause a slightly delayed explosion. I've mentioned that, aside from being a fast-paced adrenaline-pumping fight, the reason why I love this fight so much is because it's completely masterable and doesn't rely on cheap tricks or attacks to artificially inflate the difficulty. In a game where you have bosses that disorient you, bosses that fill the arena with environmental hazards, and bosses that perform basically undodgeable attacks, Radagon presents a high but fair level of challenge. You can master this fight and potentially defeat this boss without getting hit, consistently. It's just a matter of putting in the practice, which is exactly how I want boss fights to be. Tough, brutal, but also fair and rewarding to master. Also, like Dragon Slayer Armor, this dude has one of the best theme songs in the entire game. And finally, number 1, Divine Dragon. So, why is this boss ranked so high? To be fair, it's not like I like the Divine Dragon more than Radagon, Dragon Slayer Armor, or hell, even some bosses lower on the list. But the reason why this boss is at the number 1 slot is because I think it's hated much more than what it should be. In fact, I don't think it should be hated at all, but celebrated. For context, the Divine Dragon is the boss located at the end of the Fountainhead Palace in Sekiro, one of the game's toughest and greatest areas. It is a gimmick fight. You don't actually defeat the dragon normally. The way you do it is by standing on top of the pillars that periodically appear in the arena and then redirecting the lightning that strikes those pillars to the dragon. All the while you need to be dodging the dragon's attacks. The biggest complaint that most people have with this boss is that it's too easy. And yeah, it is easy. But I don't think that this is necessarily a problem. The Divine Dragon is a spectacle fight, similar to how the Storm King was back in Demon's Souls. It's not meant to test your skill, it's meant to be a really cool and breathtaking sequence. It also forces you to practice lightning redirection. Cause oh boy, you're gonna be glad that you learned it when the final fight comes around. The fight is easy and a gimmick, yes, but that's not to say that it's boring. It had just enough challenge to keep me engaged while I was looking at the pretty colors. And I actually found the lack of brutal challenge in this fight to be pretty refreshing. Remember that this is Sekiro we're talking about. Tough bosses are a dime a dozen here. And not just bosses, the Fountainhead Palace is a pretty tough area to clear, what with the countless tough enemies, the asshole that shoots lightning at you, the giant fish, and things are only going to get harder once you head back to Ashina for the final time. So yes, this boss might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think it should be appreciated for what it is. A fun, visually breathtaking spectacle fight with important lore implications and a nice change of pace from the unrelenting difficulty in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Is it the best boss fight in the game? No, it's not, but it certainly doesn't deserve the hate it gets. And that's it for my list. And now I bring the question to you. Do you agree with my list? What are your top underrated bosses? Let me know down in the comments. If you'd like to see which is my personal favorite boss of each Soulsborne game, you can click on the video that appeared on your screen. As always, thank you for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.